America's two great pastimes collide on this podcast. It is baseball and making money. From the dog days of summer through the October Classic, Greg Bases Peterson's going to be free swinging at the betting board as he tries to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. Now here is GP.
Happy Monday, one and all. Welcome into the Zuniga Tequila Studios for MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson joining you for another terrific edition, and my guest today is a buddy that I used to work with out there in Portland. We used to be co-workers at 1029 and 750 The Game. Curtis Rodgers, he currently does a lot of work with 710 ESPN out there in Seattle. He does pre- and post-game shows for the Seattle Mariners. He's going to join me in the second segment. We're going to get in depth on the Seattle Mariners, but we're going to talk a lot of AL in general. This guy is a wizard when it comes to breaking down baseball. This is going to be terrific. He's very dialed in, so I am very much looking forward to that. In the final segment, I give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board, and a little something I'd like to call Touch 'em all. Now, please note there are a couple games that are currently off the board. I will give you my thoughts on them, but obviously I won't have set plays since obviously I can't fire in on a number that is currently not up. But with that said, I will have thoughts on every one of them. But first, I know you guys asked me a couple Twitter questions, so let's dive into the mailbag and give you guys some answers.
So you have questions, and Greg may or may not have any insight into them, but let's dive into the Twitter mailbag.
This first one comes from a gentleman that goes by the name Nico Safari. You can follow him at Nico Safari. The Nico part is spelled N-E-I-K-O, and then the word Safari. He asked myself, the Sharp Plays, and Joe Osborne of Oddshark, very good member and a friend of the program, by the way. So is there a point where you start to fade long win streaks for any reason? This is one where I say the only time I fade a long win streak is if I would just be fading that team in general. This is one of those things where I don't say, oh, this team has won 8 straight games, they're bound to lose one or anything like that. That's just no way that I handicap. I'm sure that if you bet every single streak of 3+ in baseball, you probably made some money because obviously, typically if a team goes on a 3+ game win streak, they're probably playing pretty well. They're probably getting some good pitching and everything like that, and they're probably not the Baltimore Orioles, which the fact that they had a little bit of a win streak this year was a little bit befuddling, but this is one where I evaluate every game, game by game. If there is a reason to fade a team that's on a win streak, I certainly will do so. If I see value on the other side, I'll take it. And typically you will notice that these teams that are on a longer winning streak, you're going to be paying a little bit more juice on their sides than you typically would otherwise, which does give a little bit of value to the other side. But if you see a team that's undervalued and they're on a long win streak, you got to think that they're going to keep it going, and you just have to bet it if you see the value is there. That is the way that I go about things. I don't look at something and say, oh, it's a long win streak, they're bound to lose eventually, or it's a long win streak, they're just going to keep on winning, and do it blindly. I do this game by game. So that is my answer there. And then we also had another question in regards to team totals. This one came to me from Nick Mengi. You can follow him on Twitter at NOC Mayhem. And he asked, obviously, I know you don't bet them, but any thoughts or advice on team totals? This is one where I try to avoid them a little bit just because you're probably going to notice with team totals rather than regular totals, you're going to push quite a few more. Because especially when you get like a team total of 4, it's much easier for a team to fall on 4 rather than 2 teams to combine for 9 or 2 teams to combine for 8 or something like that. But the best thing I would say is you have to look at the lineup that is out there for that day. You really have to go in depth on that one team and their lineup, and then you have to take a look at the other side, and you have to try to take a look at what bullpen arms are going to be pitching. You have to take a look at the starting pitching as well, because if you notice that a team has had a lot of success against a specific pitcher, like yesterday, something I noticed after I made that play in the Mets versus the Braves game is that I noticed that a lot of the hitters for the Atlanta Braves had actually had a good history against Jacob deGrom. Now, that's not saying much because not many players have had success against Jacob deGrom, but out of all the teams that have had success against deGrom, the Atlanta Braves, I would say, probably towards the top of the list. So maybe that is one where you try to take a team total over because you think that they might be setting that number a little bit too low. You also want to take a look at the conditions for that game, and you want to just take a look at, in general, what's out there in the bullpen, because a lot of betting these totals is just looking at bullpens in general. We all know that the Washington Nationals bullpen, not built the same as the LA Angels bullpen. The LA Angels bullpen right now is a sub-2 ERA. The Washington Nationals bullpen right around an 8. So if you're taking a team total, that's something that you definitely want to take into account because Max Scherzer can give the Washington Nationals 7 great innings. But that team total still might go over because someone comes in the 8th or 9th inning like Doolittle or something like that, and he just completely gas cams the game on you. So it is one of those things where you've got to take a look at all the factors in regards to pitching. You have to take a look at who's all going to be available as well, because sometimes the biggest hit that a team gets is from a pinch hitter as well. There are some guys like Matt Adams for so many years is a great pinch hitter. Obviously, he's not in the league anymore, but Matt Stairs, professional hitter, you always want to be betting on him. And hey, Mark Reynolds for the Colorado Rockies. He's a guy that has had a lot of pinch hit home runs in his career as well. So you want to take a look at all those factors if you're betting on a team total. So great questions, guys. And now let's take a look at the results from yesterday and some of the things that we might want to look to bet in the future.
So who's streaking and who is slumping? It is time for Rakers and Fakers.
If you were on the Chicago White Sox yesterday, you cashed a very nice plus ticket as the White Sox were able to get a 5-2 win over the New York Yankees. Wasn't necessarily looking great at the start. The New York Yankees were able to put up a 2-spot to begin the game, but the Chicago White Sox were able to hang 4 runs in the 4th inning, and Carlos Rodon is a pitcher that continues to be badly undervalued. He is a guy that I'm looking to back whenever he gets a plus price. In this game, he goes 6 innings. He gives up 2 runs, has 5 strikeouts, gives up 3 hits. He has been sensational. And then my surprise was the White Sox bullpen with 3 shutout innings. I thought that Carlos Rodon was going to be good, and obviously he was. I was a little bit weary of that bullpen, but they came through. And then Tim Anderson in this game was able to hit a dinger. That was his 3rd of the year, and Yohan Moncada, 3 hits in this one. And the Yankees continue to be a little bit of a fade team. They're 6-9 right now. Aaron Judge was able to give this team an RBI, and Gleyber Torres and Lucas Voit were both able to give this team a hit. But right now, you're taking a look at some of the guys that are out there. Urshela, I don't even know who that is. Tauchman, Higashioka, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name. And you've got a mismatch of players, and Brett Gardner hitting below 200 as well. If it weren't for DJ LeMahieu, I don't know where they'd be. The Baltimore Orioles, they had a little bit of a power outage after scoring 9 runs on Saturday. They get shut out by the Boston Red Sox 4-0. Very lucky for those of us that were on the Boston Red Sox run line because Xander Bogaerts in the bottom of the 8th was able to hit a 3-run home run. And he drove in all 4 runs for the Boston Red Sox, who are struggling with the bats a little bit. Steve Pearce hitting below 200 right now. Mookie Betts hitting 233. Blake Swihart 250. Andrew Benintendi's under 300. And Dustin Pedroia and Nunez have not really gotten it going as well. Meanwhile, with the Baltimore Orioles, you knew that Chris Davis was going to come back to earth a little bit, and David Price continues to be a good pitcher for this team. He's got 3.79 ERA. He went 7 shutout innings in this one. I figured that David Price would be the guy that would right the ship, but something that I'm noticing as well, Tampa Bay Rays bullpen in recent days hasn't necessarily been as great as it was at the beginning of the year, but the offense really getting it going. They knock off the Toronto Blue Jays by a count of 8-4. Guillermo Heredia was able to give this team a pinch hit home run, his first of the year, and the Rays really did their damage late. A 5-spot in the 8th inning was what was able to carry the day for this team. You've really got a lot of guys out there that are hitting well. Brandon Lowe now hitting above 300 for this team. Avisail Garcia is hitting above 300 as well. He's been doing a good job. Kevin Kiermaier, much better than he was last year. And then when you take a look at the Toronto Blue Jays, their hitting seems to be starting to get going. Freddie Galvis is hitting 351. Justin Smoke was able to hit a home run in this series, and Galvis hit his 5th home run of the year yesterday. And then along with that, Billy McKinney has really been picking up it as well. He hit his first of the year, but you've got some feast or famine-ness with the Toronto Blue Jays. And then for the Tampa Bay Rays, they got a good start out of Charlie Morton. He only was able to go 4.2 innings because he jacked up his pitch count, but only gave up 1 run in that time period. But the guy that actually gave it up out of there in the Rays bullpen is Wilmer Font. He has an 8.10 ERA. That is something that you really want to note because he's been seeing a lot of innings for this team. And then with a ERA above 5 as well as Chaz Rowe, but you still got a lot of good arms out there for the Tampa Bay Rays, but just know that they're racking up a lot of innings. The Phillies were able to cover the run line against the Miami Marlins, winning 3-1 in 14 innings. The hero in this one was Gene Segura with a 14th inning home run off of Wei-Yin Chen, and gosh, Wei-Yin Chen, he has a 23.40 ERA. That is not necessarily good. Sergio Romo got out of a very sticky situation. And Jose Urena, the guy that I am currently having on my fade list, he was actually good in this outing. 7 innings. He did give up 7 hits, but he also had 7 strikeouts. That lone run that he gave up was a home run to Cesar Hernandez. That was his first home run of the year, so you got to give him credit there. And for the Phillies, their bullpen looked terrific. Vince Velasquez goes 6 innings. He has 4 Ks. He gives up 1 dinger, and the only player that provided any sort of offense in this game was Brian Anderson with his 3rd home run of the year. He had to feel like a very, very lonely man, as right now the Miami Marlins not getting much power generated whatsoever. I will say, if there is something that is promising for this team, is Austin Dean. Now, he went 0 for 6 in this game, but he's hitting .333. He had 4 or 5 RBI in the game before. They need it because guys like JT Riddle, Lewis Brinson and company, they're not playing well. The Miami Marlins in general, just not really getting their offense going. And even though the Pittsburgh Pirates haven't had necessarily prolific offense, their bullpen has been quite decent so far this year. Jamison Taillon gives up 3 runs in 6 innings, but in this game they were able to get a nice 2-inning save from Felipe Lopez as they win this game over the Nationals 4-3. Fading Max Scherzer has actually been very profitable. It was not his fault that the team lost this game, as he is now 1-2 with a .333 ERA. He gave up 3 runs and 7 hits in 8 innings, but he did his darndest to give the team the victory. It was once again that Washington Nationals bullpen with Wander Suero who gave up the lead in this one, as the Nationals were able to generate some offense late. You have to like that Howie Kendrick was able to drive in a run with a double. He had 2 hits in this game. He's hitting .533 since coming back to the team. Anthony Rendon hitting .400 as well. But you've got a couple guys that are not getting the job done towards the bottom of the lineup. Ryan Zimmerman hitting .205. Wilmer Defoe hitting below .200. Victor Robles, after a hot start, he seems to have cooled off. And Michael Taylor trying to reintegrate himself into the lineup. He just got off the injured list as well. Some major questions with the Nationals, who have been overvalued all year long. Meanwhile, the Pirates, lots of value there. The Minnesota Twins, they've got one of the better bullpens out there in the majors, but it was shaky on this day as they barely get by the Detroit Tigers by a count of 6-4. Jose Barrios gave up 2 runs in 6.2 innings. He was good, but from there were some very, very nervous moments as Trevor May winds up giving up 2 runs for the Minnesota Twins. They had a bunch of guys like Rodgers and Parker that come into the game, and they got into trouble. They had to get out of the bases loaded twice, as in this game, the Detroit Tigers left 10 men on base. I believe 6 of them were in the last 2 innings, and the Tigers just don't really have a lot of power at this point to be able to get things going. Nico Goodrum did not play in this game due to an injury. That is something that you want to note. Castellanos also currently out of the lineup, so that means that you're relying on Jose Candelario, Miguel Cabrera, and that is about it, because Christian Stewart hitting below 200 right now. As a matter of fact, if you want to go through the Detroit Tigers lineup, they had 6 of their 9 guys that had an at-bat yesterday hitting below 210. The Detroit Tigers are probably a team that you want to be taking some unders with, even though their game against the Twins went over. A team whose game went way over, the Royals and the Cleveland Indians. Corey Kluber does not look like himself. You've got to be fading him right now. He's got a 6.16 ERA. He goes 2.2 innings, gives up 6 runs. The Indians actually have a pretty decent bullpen. They give up 3 runs in this game in just over 5 innings of work. But all in all, they've actually done a pretty decent job with guys like Clymer, Brad Hand, and Olsen and company coming in and being able to do a solid job. But they were just asked to do a lot on this day. As for the Kansas City Royals, Lucas Duda hit a home run, his first of the year. Whit Merrifield, his 2nd home run. Jorge Soler went deep for his 4th. This is very unlike the Kansas City Royals. They've got a little bit of pop, and Alex Gordon hitting .360 for this team, and you got to like what Gore is providing as a runner as well. But, man, the Cleveland Indians right now, they're just not getting what they need out of Corey Kluber, and it's compounded by the fact that the offense hasn't necessarily been good with Francisco Lindor and Jason Kipnis out of the lineup, but perhaps this was a game in which they were able to turn the corner. Leonis Martin was able to hit his 3rd home run of the year, and he had 3 hits. Jose Ramirez is still hitting a .140. Hanley Ramirez still hitting below 200 along with Jake Bowers, but Bowers was able to go 203 in this game. Brad Miller had a good series in this one as well. So maybe you want to take a look at some more overs with the Indians, especially with the way that Corey Kluber has been pitching on those days. The St. Louis Cardinals were able to get past the Cincinnati Reds by a count of 9-5. You might want to note the long travel because this series was played out there in Mexico, so that is something that you want to note for the games on Monday. But for the St. Louis Cardinals, they were able to put on a display of power. Matt Carpenter hit his home run, his 2nd of the year. Marcell Ozuna hit home runs number 4 and 5 on the campaign. And then a little bit of an unexpected source of power was Tyler O'Neill hitting his 1st home run of the year. That was good to see for the St. Louis Cardinals. They've got a lot of guys that are not doing the best in regards to average. Matt Carpenter still at 236, Paul Goldschmidt 203, Yadier Molina 211, Dexter Fowler 220, but it was encouraging to see the long ball going. And then for the Cincinnati Reds, they were able to get a little bit more offense in this one. You got to figure that the bats are going to come around eventually for them. Perhaps this was a game as they did put up a 5-spot. Jesse Winkler was able to hit his 4th home run of the year. Yasiel Puig went deep for his first bomb of the year. But with Puig and Matt Kemp, they've both been struggling ever since coming over from LA. Both these guys are hitting below 170. Joey Votto has been hitting 245. That's really not Joey Votto-esque. Eugenio Suarez has been able to hit for average, but not necessarily power. But you do have to like the way that Tucker Barnhart has been a stabilizing force as well. But for the Reds, you just really cannot be betting on Anthony DeScalfani whenever he starts. He's currently got a 7.43 ERA. He gives up 4 runs. And then Miles Mikolas, not the pitcher he was last year as well. He's got an ERA of 6. He wound up getting a no decision, and he wasn't helped out by the fielding. Of the 4 runs that he gave up, only 3 were earned, but the St. Louis Cardinals bullpen also one of the better ones out there in the majors, and the Reds had been one of the better ones, but they struggled on this game. The Rockies, they continue to not have their bats going, but they were able to get a nice win over the San Francisco Giants by a count of 2-1. German Marquez throws a complete game 1 hitter. He is lights out for this team. He really gave the Colorado Rockies the sort of start that they needed. Derek Holland winds up giving up 4 runs. The real Derek Holland stood up in this one. And the lone guy that got a hit for the Giants was Evan Longoria, who's hitting a $197. This Giants offense is brutal. The Colorado Rockies aren't generating a lot of offense either, but perhaps this is a game that was able to get them on track because Nolan Arenado had 3 RBI in his first home run of the year. Trevor Story was able to drive in a run. Mark Reynolds had a home run on Saturday, so perhaps some encouraging signs for the Rockies. The Astros continue to streak. They have now won, I believe it is 7 straight games. They are now 11-5 on the year as they sweep the Seattle Mariners 3-2. Aldemir Diaz was the hero in this one. He was able to hit a home run in the 7th inning that put the team up for good, and Michael Brantley has really come around with the bat. He has 2 RBI in this one, and as you take a look at the Astros lineup as it was constructed yesterday, the only guy that was hitting below 200 was Max Stassi. He has not really gotten things going so far this year. Tony Kemp has also been struggling, but he seems to be getting right as well. As you just take a look at all the guys that are hitting, Yuri Gurriel is hitting 281, Carlos Correa above 300, Michael Brantley 295, Alex Bregman 313, Jose Altuve 328, George Springer 266. They've got a lot of guys up and down the boulevard that are doing well. The Astros also got 3 shutout innings from their bullpen of Rondon, Presley, and Osuna. Garrett Cole was able to deliver 11 strikeouts in 6 innings as well, so the Astros staff looking very good. And Marco Gonzalez had a good start for the Seattle Mariners in this one. 173 pitches, wound up going 5.1 innings, gave up 2 runs, but all in all, he's been a decent pitcher this year. The Seattle Mariners bullpen, actually pretty decent. I think that they're going to be getting better as the season goes along, but that's something that you want to note. And Jacob deGrom currently does not look like himself. His team loses to the Atlanta Braves by a count of 7-3, and he takes a loss himself in 5 innings, gives up 3 runs, walks 4 guys, very un-Jacob deGrom-like. And then every one of the relievers of the Mets gave up at least 1 run. Justin Wilson winds up giving up 2 runs. Paul Sewald gives up a run. And Jesus Familia, which we know is Spanish for blown save, also doesn't get the job done. I will say the Mets bats are doing quite well, even though they only scored 3 runs in this game. They did get 11 hits. They wound up leaving 10 men on base. You can't think that that's going to be the case every single time, and they did get a home run out of J.D. Davis. That is his 3rd of the year, and the Atlanta Braves really coming around with bats as well. Ozzie Albies had a triple. Nick Markakis and Josh Donaldson both had their 2nd home run of the year, and then getting a pinch hit home run for these team, his 2nd of the year, was Charlie Culberson, who hasn't seen a lot of action, but he's hitting above 400 whenever he is in the lineup. So some very encouraging signs out there for the Atlanta Braves. Not so encouraging signs for the Milwaukee Brewers as the Dodgers finally break their 6-game losing streak. They win this game by a count of 7-1. They jumped on Ulysses Chacin early and often. He gives up 6 runs in 2.1 innings. Perhaps we're seeing the end of the Ulysses Chacin run because he was so good for about a 1.5-year time period, but perhaps this is where it ends and the real Ulysses Chacin comes out because prior to his time with the Brewers, he had not been very good. The Brewers bats also had a little bit of a power outage in this game, having only 4 hits, but all in all, still a good offense. But the Dodgers, even though they were losing all those games, still very much an over team, and even though this total went under, it wasn't because of them, because in this one, they were able to get Austin Verdugo going. He went yard for his 3rd of the year. He had 3 RBI. Jock Peterson hit his 7th home run of the year. Cody Bellinger continues to hit above 400. Verdugo himself hitting 343, so that's impressive. And they did this all with Justin Turner not in the lineup as well. Dodgers were very much putting up a lot of runs, and then if you're an Oakland A's bettor, this was the bad beat of the day. They were up 7-2 going into the latter part of the game, and then in the 8th inning, the Texas Rangers put up a 4 spot to be able to win that game by a count of 8-7. That's one that's just going to make you tear your hair out, as the guy that really gave it up for the Oakland A's was good old Joakim Soria, who now has an 11.05 ERA. There's just some relievers that you don't want to see come into a game. Joakim Soria and Fernando Rodney are two of them, and they're both on the Oakland A's, unfortunately, as it squanders a good effort from the A's as well, because Matt Chapman hit a home run his 5th of the year. Steven Biscotti goes deep for a home run. That was his 3rd of the campaign. But for the Texas Rangers, this feast or famine offense was able to do it a lot with smaller ball, as the guy that was really generating the power was Elvis Andrus. He had 2 RBI, including a home run his 3rd of the year and his first triple of the year. But it was really a combination of guys that were able to come through, which is a little bit of a surprise. Hunter Pence had an RBI in this one. Lionel DeShields Jr. had a hit, and he was able to drive in a run as Dribble Cabrera came up clutch as well. And then in a pinch hitting role, this is a guy that might be able to provide some value for the Texas Rangers late in the year. Danny Santana, who has never really been able to find his foothold in the majors, he was able to come up with a very big 2 RBI hit in this one. So that could be a guy that you want to note moving forward. And for the Texas Rangers, they had a very good performance from their bullpen. They were able to go 5 scoreless after Adrian Sampson poured some lighter fluid on the game early. If you had the under, gives up 7 earned runs in 4 innings. And then for the Oakland A's, they did get a quality start out of Brett Anderson, who's been pretty good this year. He's got a 2.63 ERA, gives up 2 runs in 6 innings. He's a guy that you want to be backing. But this Oakland A's bullpen, whenever you see Soria and Fernando Rodney in there, just a little bit tough right there. And then the other result from yesterday that really needs to be noted, the Diamondbacks were able to take down the San Diego Padres by a count of 8-4. Something still doesn't quite look right with Zach Greinke. He's going to be a little bit overvalued in my opinion. He did go 7 strong innings, gave up 2 runs, but he did give up a pair of home runs in this one, as Manuel Margot had his 2nd home run of the year, and Fernando Tatis Jr. went deep for his 5th. Eric Lauer wound up giving up 3 runs, and then it was a Padres bullpen, one of the better ones out there in the bigs. Phil Maton gave up 1 run, but that was when the damage was too late, as Matt Whistler was really the guy that torpedoed this game. He gives up 4 runs in 2 innings, not necessarily redeeming qualities there, but what you did have to like to see for the San Diego Padres was the fact that they were able to get Tatis going for those 2 hits, including a home run as well. So some very interesting things out there in the big leagues, certainly some bettable trends, and we're going to get even more valuable information next, as Curtis Rodgers of 710 ESPN out there in Seattle and does pre- and post-game work for the Seattle Mariners, going to be helping me break down the American League in general. And that is up next right here on MLB Overtime Betting.
Greg is going to the bullpen as he makes a call to the Azuña hotline.
We are back here on MLB Overtime Betting. We are here in the Azuña Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas, and it is a pleasure as myself, Greg Peterson, is being joined by our next guest. This is a gentleman that I have a little bit of history with, as myself and Curtis used to be co-workers out there in the wonderful city of Portland, Oregon. We used to work at 750 1029 The Game. Now Curtis is doing great things, doing pre- and post-game shows for ESPN 710 out there in Seattle, the official flagship station of the Seattle Mariners. And you can follow Curtis on Twitter at A Kid from Kent, because he is from Kent, Washington. And he's joining me right now. Curtis, how are you doing on this day, my fine friend?
Greg, thank you so much for the intro. Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, we go back, and I definitely look back on our times working together as some of my most fondest, and yeah, great to see that you're doing huge things as well. I mean, it looks like we were both able to use that Portland pit stop as a bit of a springboard for us.
Exactly. Things are going great for you out there with the Seattle Mariners, and things are going great for the Mariners too. They, I would say, are the biggest surprise out there in baseball. They drop a couple to the Houston Astros over the weekend, but still has been a tremendous year for them going into this week. We notice that everyone on this roster is raking. You've got Mitch Haniger hitting home runs, Edwin Encarnacion, Daniel Vogelbach, for goodness sakes, Jay Bruce. The list goes on and on. What has been your takeaway and the city's takeaway in general with the Mariners? Because everything I'd been hearing is that, this team is in a rebuild mode and everything like that. And here they are atop the standings.
Yeah, I think the mood of the city right now, there's a portion of the fan base that is entirely all in. They are head over heels in love with this start. And then there's another portion that's sort of waiting for the bottom to fall out because, like you said, this was an off-season spent getting rid of a lot of veteran players in order to bring in some young talent and give some guys who may not have had that platform before to really show that they can do it on a day-to-day basis, kind of like Daniel Vogelback. But that portion of the fan base very much sort of in a wait-and-see mode or just waiting for the bottom to fall out because they have the longest playoff drought of any team in North American sports, which is this elephant in the room of this amazing start. They're 13-4 on the season. They've set the major league record for most consecutive games to begin a season with a home run. No one had projected this. Looking up and down, a lot of preseason expectations. I think Sports Illustrated listed them as a team with just nothing exciting to look at or no exciting personalities. And over the first 17 games or so, we've seen a lot of people really step forward. You mentioned Edwin Encarnacion, Mitch Haniger, a guy who has been overlooked, I think, over the course of his career is Domingo Santana. He had 30 home runs just 2 seasons ago with the Brewers. Last year, sort of forced out because of the offseason moves that the Brewers made, adding Lorenzo Cain, adding the MVP and Christian Yelich. They didn't really have a spot for him. He goes to AAA, chops it up down there for a year. The Mariners identify him as a piece that they really want. They give up just a fourth outfielder type in Ben Gamel. And now Domingo Santana has come over to the Mariners and has produced, I think, equal to a guy who they lost last year, Nelson Cruz, if not even better, which is wild to think because Nelson Cruz over the last 4 or 5 seasons has been one of the best power-hitting righties in all of baseball. So it's just been a tremendously fun first 2.5 weeks of the season.
It has been really interesting as we've got Curtis Rodgers joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And we notice that the landscape of this division in general is one that I think is very intriguing. The LA Angels seem to have taken a little bit of a step back there. Game on Sunday obviously got rained out. They were going to be without Mike Trout anyway, so it's as if they actually caught a little bit of a break there. You take a look at the Oakland A's. I don't think that anyone thought that they would be able to duplicate what they did last year. They were just on a absolutely terroristic run, and they just never seemed to come down. And then the Texas Rangers, well, they're the Texas Rangers, and we all know what the Houston Astros can do. What's your general takeaways on the division right now? Because I just don't think the Mariners are going to be there at the end, but I certainly think that they could contend for a wild card and be that number 2 team.
I think what we've seen this weekend with the Astros taking the first 2 games against the Mariners and also them being in the midst of an 8-game winning streak currently, I think the Astros are still the class of the division. But you look at the rest of the American League, there are question marks abound with so many teams that we had identified as contenders at the beginning of the season. You look at the American League East, the Yankees, they have tons of injuries they're dealing with. The Red Sox have gotten off to a terrible start. You've got in the American League West, the A's, you don't know if they're going to be able to replicate the 96 wins that they did a year ago. The Angels kind of stuck in this middle ground, waiting for Shohei Ohtani, at least his bat, to return. And then the American League Central, really no one is doing anything to separate themselves there. Cleveland, who on paper is the most talented team, they're still without Francisco Lindor. You don't quite know when he's going to return. So right now the American League as a whole is up for grabs, but I think in the West, I have the Astros pegged as the division champs there. I mean, just look at their lineup. It's unrelenting. And then they go out and added Michael Brantley, former All-Star, who played some pretty big games with Cleveland over his career. They're back into the rotation, not as strong as it was a year ago, but still very formidable. I have the Astros as my American League West prediction champions. But the Mariners right now, I think they're causing a lot of people to stop and consider, could these guys and could this offense be good enough to challenge Houston in the American League West? Remains to be seen. I'm of the ilk that the Mariners offense is going to slow down a little bit, but you look at the run differential, which Mariners fans last year, that was sort of a buzzword because the Mariners' record was nice, but that run differential wasn't. At times it was negative, even though they were 15, 20 games over 500. This year, they are second in all of baseball in run differential at plus 36. And I don't think you can fluke your way into a plus 36 run differential through the first 17 games of the season. I think that there's something there. I think there's some meaning to that. But for the Mariners to continue at this pace over the course of an entire season, they would be a record-setting offense. And in an age where home runs are the norm and also strikeouts being the norm, for the Mariners to challenge the major league record, which was set last year of home runs in a season set by the New York Yankees, which also, by the way, belonged to the Mariners before then, I don't think this is a lineup that you look at and say, oh yeah, they're going to break a 1-year-old record for home runs. I don't see it, but I think the Mariners can challenge simply because the rest of the American League, no one has stepped up and has really said, yeah, we're going to be a contender here. You look at the American League East, again, Tampa Bay, who had a great season last year, they could potentially run away with this thing before too late.
Exactly, and you mentioned the AL Central a little bit earlier. The Indians just got swept by the Royals. And that includes a game in which they were playing against Homer Bailey. And when Homer Bailey starts, going into that game, teams that he had been starting for were 1-21 in their last 22 games. That's how bad it's going for the Indians right now as we've got Curtis Rodgers on the horn. It's just absolutely insane to see what's all happening in the American League right now. And I feel like it's as open as it has been for a very long time because we thought that some of the contenders would be the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox. Both these teams haven't necessarily gotten the job done. The Yankees have been very banged up. The Boston Red Sox, I just have no idea what the heck is happening with their pitching staff in general. We point out the Houston Astros, they're really picking things up, but they got off to a little bit of a rough start to begin the year. So I do think that in regards to the landscape of the AL East, it's as open as we've seen it in a very, very long time. Yeah,
absolutely. And you got to wonder just what exactly is going on with the Red Sox. 6-10. They were 3-9 at one point. A minus 25 run differential, which is tied for second worst in the American League. The only team worse is by far the worst team, and that's the Baltimore Orioles in terms of at least talent, because the Orioles, they get the number one pick in the draft this year. They're probably going to get it this next year as well as the year after that. So a team in Boston to go from 108 wins a year ago and a World Series title and an MVP in Mookie Betts to where they are after the season's first, 10% of games being done, that to me is maybe the most standout thing going on in baseball, maybe even more surprising than the Mariners start at 13-4.
It is really interesting to see what is all happening out there in the American League, in the American East. And who would you say is the most surprising player out there in regards to this entire American League? Because we've seen a lot of guys step up, most of which are with the Seattle Mariners, because you talked about Domingo Santana. I remember him being a Milwaukee Brewers fan, just being essentially exiled from the team last year. He's found the fountain of youth. We've got so many guys out there with the Houston Astros that are right now just clubbing the ball. I mentioned before they had gotten off to a very slow start, but now they're really hitting. Someone else that I really like is DJ LeMahieu for the New York Yankees. He's hitting right around 400. It's been a sensational year for him. And heck, you just take a look at the LA Angels. Zach Cozart is hitting 100. Peter Borges is hitting 050. I feel like there are so many good and bad surprises all across the American League so far.
Yeah, you brought up the Mariners offense, and I think a good majority of surprises in the American League come from them because Daniel Vogelbach, who had been sort of that 4A player type over the last couple of seasons, he's been given an opportunity to get some at-bats at DH and first base, and he's certainly made the most of them. He's got 6 home runs on the season, and a lot of those home runs have been incredibly timely. He's came up with the game-winning home run a couple days ago in Kansas City in the 10th inning. He had an 8th inning home run against the Angels about a week and a half ago, which gave the Mariners a 2-1 victory. He's a guy that's certainly surprised. Domingo Santana leading all of baseball in RBIs. I like that you bring up DJ LeMahieu because he's a former National League hits leader. I believe he's also got a batting title under his belt. You look at the Yankees and the injuries that they've sustained, not just already this season with Miguel Andujar going down, but also, Didi Gregorius, who's probably going to miss the majority of this season. It was important for the Yankees to find middle infield depth. They tried it with Troy Tulowitzki. He's banged up right now. So now you bring in DJ LeMahieu, a guy who's got a history of just putting the bat on the ball, putting it in play, getting on base. I think that was a very under-the-radar pickup made by the Yankees. A couple of other surprises. I think a lot of people projected Mike Zunino to play better when he was acquired by the Tampa Bay Rays. Just a new organization, him getting another chance to just kind of get over whatever it was that he had here in Seattle. He was never able to put it together. He had a ton of hype, coming out of college, being a number 3 overall pick. He gets to go kind of back to where he's from in Tampa, but he's just been awful behind the dish for Tampa Bay this season. And even despite that, the Rays are still winning at a ridiculous clip so far this season. And, just kind of a testament to what they've built in Tampa, that they can sustain, Mike Zunino's bat, which is below, I believe it's below a 150 right now. I think they've got something going there this year, and I think they're going to challenge for the American League East.
I'm right there with you as Curtis Rodgers joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And I've noticed with the Tampa Bay Rays and so many other teams that are towards the top of the league, the bullpens have been able to come through. Of all the teams with the best bullpen in the bigs right now in regards to ERA, it is actually the LA Angels. They've been doing a good job. The Mariners are towards the top there right now, middle-ish. They haven't necessarily been lighting the world on fire at the same time. They haven't been the gas can that, say, the Washington Nationals have been in teams like that. But what do you think overall of the bullpen of the Mariners? Because I feel like this is going to be a very important part of the team this year. Obviously, they don't have Edwin Diaz. He went away in that Robinson Cano trade, but I still feel like you have a couple decent arms, and they're going to be getting some guys back because I know that Hunter Strickland is obviously going to be out for a very long time, and Sam, I'm going to butcher this last name, Tuo Tagovailoa or whatever his last name is. I know that he's going to be coming back. I remember him from last year along with Jason Bradford as well.
Yeah, the Mariners bullpen right now, it's in an interesting place because I think it was built with the mindset that this team wasn't going to contend this season, or at least they weren't going to force the issue of contention this season, but all of a sudden you're off to a 13-4 start. Their bullpen has left a lot to be desired. I think they lead all of baseball with the most relievers with a save this season. I think Connor Sadzik was the last guy to get a real save. You've got Roenis Elias, who's gotten some saves. Obviously, Hunter Strickland, before he was injured, he had a couple of saves in there as well. I think right now the Mariners are hoping that they can solve these issues in-house before they go out and scour the market for relief help. Connor Sadzik is an interesting piece in that they got him from the Texas Rangers organization right at the end of spring training. He can touch 98, 99 miles an hour on the radar gun. So he's got velocity. You don't quite know what his secondary stuff is like. Another interesting guy in that bullpen is Rule 5 pick Brandon Brennan, who they got from the Colorado Rockies organization this last offseason. Rule 5 picks, kind of as the standard goes, you want to bring them in when it's a 3-run or a 5-run game just so that they have a lot more wiggle room to play with. But he's been placed in some high-leverage situations. Maybe the most high-leverage situation we saw him in was game number 2 of the season in Tokyo. Bases loaded, Chris Davis up at the plate. Oakland's Chris Davis, not Baltimore's Chris Davis, because that's about as low leverage as it gets these days. but Oakland's Chris Davis was up at the dish, and he got him to ground into an inning-ending double play in Brennan's first ever appearance in the major league. So I think that was, an incredible way to sort of get baptized into the game right off the bat. But he hasn't given up a run yet. And I mean, he's just a Rule 5 pick. His changeup has really been his best pitch so far this season. So I hope, that's kind of a diamond in the rough right now for the Mariners bullpen. Should be interesting to see how it shakes out. Another under the radar move. This last week, in a minor league deal, they signed Neftali Feliz, former Rangers closer. Ooh. So, who knows if there's anything left in that right arm, but it's certainly worth taking a flyer on.
I certainly agree with you. I remember Neftali Feliz back when the Rangers were going to the World Series, which was absolutely filthy. So if they can get anything out of him whatsoever, I think that that'll be very interesting. And out of all the bullpens out there in the American League, which ones would you say you have the most confidence in? Right now, I really like what I've seen, as I mentioned before, out of the Angels bullpen. I think that they're good. I actually like what I've been seeing out of the Astros recently as well. They've got a couple unknown arms. They obviously are without Dallas Keuchel, so they had to put Brad Peacock into the starting rotation as well. But I do think that once the Mariners are healthy, they're able to get back guys like Bradford and company. And if they can get anything whatsoever out of Natali Feliz, this is going to be one of the better bullpens out there in the American League.
Yeah, I mean, you look at bullpens across the American League, the team with certainly the most names in their bullpen would be the New York Yankees with Dellin Betances and Chad, but Betances is likely going to miss some time here. Chad Green, you got Zach Britton. They just got guys after guys after guys in their bullpen. The Yankees off to a slow start this year. They're 6-9 as it currently stands. You mentioned Houston's bullpen with Roberto Osuna closing games down. The Mariners have had a tough time getting back into games in the first two games of this series after falling down early. And I think that's due in large part to what Houston's bullpen has been able to accomplish. Will Harris out there, Chris Gavinsky. They've been a really solid bullpen over the last couple of seasons. Hector Rondon also out there. I think the Astros, top to bottom, I think they have the fewest question marks of any team in the American League. Because you look at Boston, yeah, they've got a lot of upper-level talent, but their bullpen, huge question mark, especially with no Craig Kimbrell this year. You've got the Yankees and their health. You don't know who's going to be healthy each and every game. Cleveland, they kind of shopped Corey Kluber this offseason, which was weird to see. Didn't get any takers, and so now you don't know how long Cleveland's window is going to be open. But Houston, and with their young players, it's wild to think that their young players are still young. Like Jose Altuve, only about 28 years old. Alex Bregman, he's in his mid-20s. Carlos Correa, still also in his mid-20s. I mean, these guys still have years in front of them. When I look at the American League and I look at the most dangerous team out there, they're winners of their last 8 after the 2-5 start. I think it's Houston over everybody, at least in terms of who I think could really separate themselves from the pack.
I am right there with you. And Curtis, it's been great talking to you today. You've given us some tremendous insight on not just the Seattle Mariners, but the whole American League in general. Let the good people know where they can find you on social media and all that you're doing up there for the ESPN 710 affiliate out there in Seattle.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at a kid from Kent. Always got to shout out the hometown. Hosting Seattle Sports at night, Seattle Sports Saturday, Seattle Sports at night, 7 to 9 most nights, or following the Mariners games. And then Seattle Sports Saturday airing 9 to noon Pacific time every Saturday. So make sure you're tuning in for all of those good times. And Greg, thank you so much for having me on today.
Awesome. Curtis, we're going to have to do this more often, my friend, because that was terrific. A big thanks to Curtis Rodgers for joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And now that we're a little bit more enlightened on the American League in general, it is time to give you a side and total on every game on Monday's betting board. And we do so in a little something I like to call Touch 'em All.
Hey, I'm Steve Heitner, the guy who uttered the famous phrase, "That's gold." And that's the inspiration of my new podcast, That's Gold with Steve Heitner. We talk sports, sports betting, movies, comedy, food, drink, Vegas, music, movies, and more. 5 days a week. Did I say movies twice? Look, guys love it, whether they're hip or worried about breaking a hip. Find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Stitcher. That's Gold with me, Steve Heitner.
Welcome back to MLB Overtime. Greg is throwing a gem, so yeah, he better not blow it.
And we're back here in the Zuniga Tequila Studios for MLB Overtime Betting. A big thanks to my buddy Curtis Rodgers and co-worker as well for joining me in the last segment, doing terrific work out there with the Seattle Mariners, with ESPN 710 out there in Seattle. So really good to get him on the show. And as you can tell, he is as sharp as a tack. So we are going to be having him on this podcast much more often. And if you ever have guest suggestions, anything like that for the show, always feel free to tweet them in at June_81. But now it is that time that I give you a side and total on every game on Monday's MLB betting board in a little something I like to call Touch 'em All.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch 'em all.
A lot of these plays are locked in. There are a couple that are still pending. Any games that are pending right now, I will let you know. And there are a couple games that are off the board as well, so obviously not going to be able to have plays on those, but anything that changes is going to be noted on my Twitter page at June_81. And we're going to go in rotation order. 901, 902 on the betting rotation. The New York Mets go to Philadelphia to face off against the Phillies. Noah, a.k.a. Thor Syndergaard, goes for the New York Mets. Meanwhile, Aaron Supernola for the Philadelphia Phillies. Total in this game is 7.5 and is shaded under. 7.5 is between -110 and -115 to the under. Over is between -105 and -110. If you like the Mets, you're going to get anywhere between +105 and +107. If you like the Phillies, anywhere between -115 and -117. This is a little bit of an interesting game. I'm right now in wait-and-see mode in regards to the Mets because the Mets, as we know, are playing a Sunday night game against the Atlanta Braves, one of which was delayed by rain. That is a little bit of an interesting factor. I want to see how much a bullpen gets used because Jacob deGrom is going in this game, and at the time of this broadcast, the game is going on. But I do like Noah Syndergaard in this spot. I am looking at the Mets. Syndergaard, he sometimes gets up the long ball a little bit, and we know that the Phillies bats are really, really good. They had a couple rough games against the Miami Marlins, but they were able to get the job done in the 14th inning yesterday. You've got Bryce Harper in the lineup that's doing a great job. Odubel Herrera is a guy that I like. You got to think that JT Realmuto is going to pick things up. Andrew McCutchen has had a couple nice games for this team as well. I do like what Rhys Hoskins is doing in regards to a power standpoint. He's been coming back to earth a little bit with regards to his average, but all in all, he's been having himself a good year. And even towards the bottom of the lineup, guys like Sean Kingery are doing a great job as well. He's been playing a little bit at third base. You're also able to bring in Maikel Franco. He's a good bottom of the lineup player. And then for the Mets in general, their bats have really gotten going, which is why I am on the over. You've got Pete Alonso in his rookie year just absolutely raking for this team. Wilson Ramos hitting above 300. Guys like Ahmed Rosario have been able to deliver something. Jeff McNeil hitting above 300. Brandon Nimmo at the top of the lineup got off to a rough start along with Robinson Cano, but Nimmo seems to be picking it up. Robinson Cano, not so much. But even a guy like a J.D. Davis towards the bottom of the lineup has been doing a great job as well. And I know that both these teams don't necessarily have great relievers. I have a little bit more faith in the Phillies bullpen than the Mets bullpen, so I do think that Syndergaard getting off to a big start will be huge for this team, and I do think that Aaron Nola has regressed a little bit from last year. It's just hard to duplicate what he did last year. Comes into this game with a 6.46 ERA, letting himself a little bit to hard contact. I think he's going to be exposed by the Mets bats, who have been doing a very good job this year. Going to be on this over for sure, and I'm most likely going to be on the Mets unless if something insane happens during Sunday Night Baseball, but currently in wait-and-see mode on these plays. We move on from there to 903, 904. The Chicago Cubs are going to be in Miami to face off against Marlin. Trevor Richards goes for the Miami Marlins. Yu Darvish goes for the Chicago Cubs. Currently, this game is off the board in Vegas, but I am seeing an offshore number on this game, and if you like the Miami Marlins, you are going to really like this price, as currently the Chicago Cubs offshore are a -155 favorite. If you want to take a shot on the Marlins, you're going to be getting +145, and the total in this game is 8. And that 8 is -110 both ways in regards to the over and the under. If there is something similar to this when this game opens up in Vegas, I'm going to be all about the Marlins, and I'm going to be all about the over. This is just a straight fade here of Yu Darvish. It looks like the Chicago Cubs bullpen is getting righted a little bit more, but Yu Darvish, just absolutely awful. This guy has no command of anything right now. And Trevor Richards, I know that he went like 4-9 last year, but he's actually a decent pitcher. He's a guy that does a good job of being able to limit hard contact. He's 0-1 this year, but he's only got a 2 ERA. Does a good job of being able to pitch out of tricky situations. He sometimes gives up a few more free passes than he should, but something else I'm noticing about the Marlins is that they had a call-up from AAA that could be paying dividends for this team, as Austin Dean, currently hitting .333, 1 home run, 6 RBI. He went 4 for 5 on Saturday against the Philadelphia Phillies, who was just absolutely mashing the ball. Miguel Rojas is hitting above 300 for this team. Curtis Granderson at the top of the lineup has not been doing much, but you gotta like the way that Martin Prado has been able to come in some pinch hitting situations. It seems like Neil Walker is starting to come around with the bat. He had 2 hits yesterday, so all very good signs for this team. And heck, even behind the plate, they're starting to get a little bit of something out of Chad Wallace, who was hitting above 300. JT Riddle provides some power, but he's not hitting for a lot of average. Neither is Lewis Brinson, but I do think that the Marlins are going to be able to get some free passes from Yu Darvish, and we know that the Cubs bullpen, though it's been better as of late, has not necessarily been great. And for the Cubs, they've got a couple struggling bats themselves. They obviously did not play yesterday due to that rain out. They have Anthony Rizzo hitting below 200 along with Kyle Schwarber. You have to like the way that Daniel Descalso and Ben Zobrist have been getting on towards the top of the lineup, but even Javi Baez, his average has been dipping a little bit. Bodie has been okay, but he hasn't necessarily been great. And Wilson Contreras has really been the best bat in this lineup along with Jason Hayward of all guys. This is a spot in which I would have to take a plus price with the Miami Marlins and look to play this total over. Like I said, this game is currently not up in Vegas, so check back on my Twitter page at UNet_81 once an official line is up in the wonderful city of Las Vegas. We move on to 9:05, 9:06 on the betting rotation. It is the St. Louis Cardinals heading to Milwaukee to face off against the Beer Makers. It is Freddie Peralta on the bump for the Brewers. Meanwhile, Dakota Hudson goes for the St. Louis Cardinals. Total in this game is 9.5, and it is shaded under. The under is -120. The over is even. If you like the Milwaukee Brewers, you're going to be laying -125. Want to take a shot on the Cardinals, getting anywhere between +110 and +115. St. Louis Cardinals were able to get things done in what was quite a slugfest against the Cincinnati Reds yesterday. That was a game in which the Cardinals were able to pick up a 9-5 win. I thought that was really interesting, as the bullpen of the Cardinals has actually been pretty good so far this year, but you're noticing that it's getting tasked, and I really have to like the Brewers in this spot because the St. Louis Cardinals have to make a very, very interesting flight because their games over the weekend, they were playing them in Monterrey, Mexico. That means a very, very long flight for these gentlemen. And you also notice that for the St. Louis Cardinals, they had to use up nearly all their bullpen arms yesterday. They had Hicks come into the game, Andrew Miller, Gant, the list goes on and on and on. The St. Louis Cardinals seem to be getting a little bit more average in regards to hitting from Matt Carpenter. He's up to a 236. Paul Goldschmidt is only hitting 203 right now, though. Yadier Molina seems to be picking things up a little bit along with Dexter Fowler, but both these guys are struggling a little bit. The plate, Colton Wong has been hitting a little bit of a rough spell, and Freddie Peralta, he is a box of chocolates. In his start against the Cincinnati Reds about a week ago, he looked absolutely tremendous. He went 8 strong innings, gave up 2 hits. He was terrific there. And then when you take a look at the start, when he faced off against the Angels, he gives up 7 runs in 3.1 innings there. His first start of the year wasn't necessarily great either, so it's going to be very interesting to see what the Milwaukee Brewers do there. I will say that they're going to have Josh Hader available for this game. He hasn't pitched the past couple days, but they still have Corey Knebel and Jeremy Jeffries on the injured list. The bullpen has taken a little bit of a step back there, so for that reason, I am on this total over, and I have locked in that over, and I've already locked in the Brewers myself. I just think that the long road trip for the St. Louis Cardinals, the literally multi-country road trip for the St. Louis Cardinals is going to take its toll, and I'm just not bullish on Dakota Hudson. I know that he has a 2.79 ERA so far this year, but he is wildly inconsistent with regards to his command. He just gives up way too many walks for my liking. He did so last year. He's already given up 7 free passes in 9.2 innings so far this year. He has opponents hitting .310 against him. He's had to get off a lot of really sticky situation, and he's lucky that his ERA is not higher than what it is right now. And I think that the likes of Christian Yelich and company are going to be able to rake him. He has Monty Grandal hitting .391. Mike Moustakas seems to be picking it up with regards to his power. And Lorenzo King and Ryan Braun doing a terrific job in the lineup as well. So for that reason, on the Brewers and the over, both these plays are all locked in. 9:07, 9:08 on the betting rotation. It is the Cincinnati Reds, and they go to Los Angeles to face off against the Dodgers. It is the season debut of Clayton Kershaw as he is on the bump opposing Luis Castillo. Total on this game is 7.5, and it is shaded under. Under is anywhere between -120 and -125. The over is +105 to even juice. If you like the Cincinnati Reds, you're going to be getting a plus price of anywhere between +145 and +152. While lay with the Dodgers, that is anywhere between -160 and -165. I just don't think we're going to see Clayton Kershaw for too long. In the past times where he's been injured and he's come back, he typically hasn't gotten more than 6 innings. And something we've noticed about the LA Dodgers bullpen, it's not very good. They had to use a whole bunch of relievers on Saturday because they had Caleb Ferguson make a spot start. They've got so many guys that have used so many pitches for this team. Julio Arias did not do much of a favor for them on Friday as he had a short outing there. This is just a hard Dodgers team to trust because before they were able to get that win over the Brewers yesterday, they were on a 6-game losing streak. This is a spot where I'm going to take the Cincinnati Reds. I know that they're on a very long road trip, but the road trip from Mexico to Los Angeles, much shorter than the one that we're seeing with the St. Louis Cardinals going from Mexico to Milwaukee. So I do think that that's actually a little bit of a factor. Luis Castillo has actually been lights out for this Reds team so far this year. His ERA is below 1, and the guy just has very positive plus stuff, a very good fastball. In 19.2 innings, he's got 25 strikeouts so far this year. You do have to fear the walks. He has 8 of them so far this year, but opponents hitting .082 off of him. We know that the Dodgers have a bunch of guys that are matching for this team so far this year. Justin Turner towards the top of the lineup has been doing a great job. Cody Bellinger, probably the hottest bat out there in baseball. Got like the way that Austin Barnes has shored up that catcher spot, but even though Kike Hernandez has been doing a good job, you do have a couple sleepy bats out there as well. Corey Seager has had his ups and downs so far this year. A.J. Pollock seems to be falling back to earth a little bit. Taylor is hitting below 200. So there are a couple spots to be had here as well. This is a game in which I do think that the Reds are going to be able to get to the bullpen. And we noticed in their trip to Mexico that they were able to get something going on Sunday. Dan Diedrich now has 4 home runs for this team. Eugenio Suarez hitting just below 300. You got to think that Joey Votto is going to be able to pick things up. Another encouraging sign for the Reds is that even though he's hitting below 200, Jesse Winkler now has 4 home runs as well. He seems to be picking things up. Yasiel Puig was able to go deep in that game as well. So there are some redeeming qualities for the Reds, who also have Tucker Barnhart, who's hitting 281. So for that reason, going to play this total over because I think that the Reds are going to be able to get into the Dodgers bullpen, and I am going to take the plus price here with Luis Castillo going for the Cincinnati Reds. 909, 910 on the betting rotation. It is the Colorado Rockies, and they go on the road to face off against the San Diego Padres. For the Padres, it is Joey Lucchesi, and this game is off the board because the Colorado Rockies have yet to decide a pitcher. At the time of this broadcast, the Rockies still have not announced a starter, but from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, Antonio Senzatella is most likely going to be the suspect out there on the mound for the Colorado Rockies, which is very interesting because Senzatella last year had some very good starts and he had some awful starts. This is one in which you have to wait and see on the number. The Rockies were able to get a nice 4-0 win over the San Francisco Giants yesterday, and the Rockies bullpen in general has been pretty good. And with the San Diego Padres, they've got a terrific bullpen. They pitch out there in a pitcher's ballpark. Joey Lucchesi sometimes gives up a little bit more hard contact than he should, but all in all, I like him as a pitcher. If you're getting a reasonable price with the San Diego Padres and a total that's above 7.5, I'm going to look at the under in the Padres. If you're getting a massive plus price with the Rockies, I might take a look at them, and then if you get a total of 7, it's a little bit interesting, but as of right now, I'd be leaning a little bit more towards an under, and I would be leaning towards the San Diego Padres, because even though the Padres took a bit of a tough loss against the Arizona Diamondbacks yesterday, they've been all in all for the year doing a very good job. You've now got Manny Machado and Eric Hosmer in the lineup. Neither of these guys have necessarily hit their peak form so far this year, but both guys are able to deliver some power. They're able to do a good job of getting on base. You got to think that Fanmil Reyes is going to be able to pick things up for this team. Manuel Margot has gotten going with his bat. Fernando Tatis Jr., very nice hitter. Hunter Renfroe is coming back to earth, but he's still able to hit for average. And you got to think at some point Ian Kinsler is going to pick it up with the bat. Meanwhile, for the Colorado Rockies, you've got a bunch of guys that are just not hitting the way that you think that they should be for this team. Mark Reynolds being able to hit a home run over the weekend was a good sign, and Nolan Arenado, you got to think at some point is going to be able to make some hard contact and get some more home runs. He hit his first of the year yesterday. That was a 3 RBI day for him. That was obviously a good sign. Garrett Hampson still hitting below 200. Mark Reynolds also hitting below 200 along with Ian Desmond and Valikia. All those things are not really boding well for this team, and Charlie Blackmon even at the top of the lineup not hitting so well himself. You gotta think that the bats are gonna get going, but the question is when. I don't want to bet on that being on Monday unless if I see something very, very favorable. So that is my takeaway on that game. Like I said, no lineup on this game, so plays are going to be up on my Twitter page at @GNut_81 once one is available. 9-11, 9-12 on the betting rotation. It is Boston Red Sox playing host to the Baltimore Orioles. Dan Straley goes for the Baltimore Orioles. Hector Velasquez for the Boston Red Sox, who are at home, and they are a massive favorite. The Boston Red Sox are between a -250 and -260 favorite. If you like the Baltimore Orioles, you're getting anywhere between +215 and +220. Gosh darn it. I am on the Orioles, as I forgot to give you guys a total as well as I was lamenting that. Total is 11, and it is shaded under. The under is between minus 110 and minus 115. The over is between minus 105 and minus 110. I'm also seeing a 10.5. If you like the under on 10.5, that is plus 105. The over is minus 125. Yep, you just heard me say it. I'm on the Baltimore Orioles. Both these teams are stunningly 6-10. The Boston Red Sox were able to shut out the Orioles yesterday, and I do think that this is going to be another lower scoring game. Dan Straley, not necessarily the starter that you want to be backing, as he enters this game with a ERA that was back from the roaring 20s. 1929 is his ERA. That was also the year that the Great Depression started. Yeah. When your ERA is the year that the Great Depression started, that's not necessarily a redeeming quality, but we've noticed that the Boston Red Sox have not really been picking things up with their bats. Xander Bogaerts was able to hit a nice 3-run home run yesterday, but they've got a bunch of guys that have been struggling a little bit. Mitch Moreland has been doing a good job with 5 home runs. He's got a decent batting average. JD Martinez is hitting .333, but Steve Pearce has taken a step back this year. He's hitting a .154. Nunez in the infield is hitting a .184. Dustin Pedroia is not able to get things going. Christian Vasquez at the catcher spot, not really getting things going. Mookie Betts is hitting .233. This team just doesn't have the power that they did last year. And with the Baltimore Orioles, you've actually got some decent hitting going on. Jonathan Villar hitting nearly 300. Dwight Smith Jr. has been hitting .260. Trey Boom Boom Mancini, .339 batting average. He had another double yesterday. Jesus Sucre has really been struggling, but Chris Davis over the weekend got 3 hits, for goodness sakes. You got a couple guys that are struggling for the Orioles as well, so I don't see either team being able to get to 5 runs, but I do think that the Baltimore Orioles are going to be able to get something out of Dan Straley. I think that he got the kinks figured out in the first matchup. And then when you look at Velasquez, this is a guy that just doesn't go deep into games. He's not going to be able to provide 5+ innings. And with the Boston Red Sox, their bullpen is decent, but it's not great. You really can't trust guys like Bryce Johnson and company to be able to give you a bunch of bridge innings. Tyler Thornburg, still a little bit of a question mark as well. And I think that Hector Velasquez probably going to go only 3 innings in this one, so I think that you're going to be really relying on the bullpen of the Boston Red Sox. It's not a place where I want to be. So for that reason, taking the massive plus price here with the Baltimore Orioles because I am a schmuck, and I am taking this total under. I have already locked in this under in wait-and-see mode as to just what kind of a plus value I'm going to get with the Baltimore Orioles. Game 9-13, 9-14 on the betting rotation. The Toronto Blue Jays head to the Twin Cities to face off against the Minnesota Twins. Martin Perez goes for the Twins. Meanwhile, Matt Shoemaker on the bump for the Toronto Blue Jays. The total on this game is 8.5, and it is shaded over. The over is anywhere between minus 115 and minus 120. Under is anywhere between even juice and minus 105. If you want to take a shot on the Blue Jays, you're going to get anywhere between even money and plus 110. Meanwhile, I'm actually seeing a plus 116 pop up as well. So money really coming in regards to the Minnesota Twins, as the Twins are now anywhere between minus 115 and minus 126 favorites. And this is a spot where I actually do look at the Toronto Blue Jays. I do like the way that they were able to pick things up against the Rays with regards to their bats. They weren't able to pull out too many wins in that series as they took just 1 of 3, but Freddie Galvis doing a great job for this team in the lineup, hitting .351, 5 home run, 11 RBI. He's been leading the team in a little bit of everything. Justin Smoke was able to hit a home run against the Tampa Bay Rays. He's still not hitting necessarily for average along with Randall Grichuk. Both these guys have been hitting below 200 for pretty much the entire year. Smoke is up to 225 now, but neither of these guys really getting the job done. Lourdes Gurriel still hitting below 200, but if there is a redeeming quality, it is the fact that they're getting a little bit more out of the DH spot in Rowdy Tellez. He is now hitting 200. He's got 3 home runs, 6 RBIs as well, so he's picking it up there. Brandon Drury and Jansen at the bottom of the lineup, not really providing much, but even McKinney at the top of the lineup starting to get things going as well for the Toronto Blue Jays. Meanwhile, I really like the way that Matt Shoemaker is pitching. He goes into this game 3-0 in his 3 starts, 0.92 ERA. And with Martin Perez, oh gosh, he's 1-0 so far this year, but his ERA is a massive 7.56. He does a good job of being able to get strikeouts, I guess. He's got 12 strikeouts in 8.1 innings, but those were as a reliever. He's also given up 9 walks in 8.1 innings. This is a guy that for years has been terrible. I mean, terrible at locating and he's been working as sort of a pseudo starter, sort of a reliever. And when you have these guys that are sort of in that in-between range, it means that you're really going to have to tax a Minnesota Twins bullpen that got a lot of use yesterday because they very nearly blew the lead against the Detroit Tigers. So I do think that the smart money here has to go to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to be taking them, and I've already locked in the plus 115 on the Toronto Blue Jays. I am all about them in this spot. Currently in wait-and-see mode on the under. When I came on for this broadcast, the under was actually at minus 105. We're now seeing it at even, so trying to see if I can get even a plus price on that under, but I am all about the Toronto Blue Jays and the under in this spot. 915, 916 on the betting rotation. It is the LA Angels, and they go on the road to face off against the Texas Rangers. Trevor Cahill takes a bump for the Angels. Meanwhile, Shelby Miller for the Texas Rangers. Currently, there is no lineup on this game, but I can tell you right now, I am going to be all aboard the LA Angels. Shelby Miller is a pitcher that you cannot back. I am going to be on the Angels run line in this spot. Trevor Cahill, actually a pretty decent pitcher so far this year. He did a good job last year with the Oakland A's. He's not going to blow you away with his tremendous fastball or anything like that, but he just does a good job of being able to get outs. And one thing that Shelby Miller does not do, he doesn't get out to save his life. He's right now got a 9.53 ERA and his whip 3.18. And the last time these two teams faced off and Shelby Miller was on the bump, the LA Angels were able to get a very convincing win there. So I do think that the Angels will be able to get the job done once again. Now, the interesting thing is Mike Trout going to be in the lineup? I feel like that's part of the reason why this game is off the board. He missed the weekend series with the Cubs due to a little bit of a groin strain. I am curious to see what happens there. I'm curious on the total as well. The Texas Rangers were able to have a nice come-from-behind win yesterday against the Oakland A's, and this is a team that is very feast or famine just because of the way that their lineup is set up. You've got guys like Joey Gallo, Asdrubal Cabrera, Noah Mazar and company that they all have great power, but they don't do a good job of being able to hit for average. Delino DeShields Jr., after his 2 hits yesterday, got his average up to 200. You got a couple guys that are doing a good job of being able to get on. Elvis Andrus, Hunter Pence, and Sin Choo, very reliable and being able to get on base, but I have more faith in the Angels, even though they've got a couple sleepy bats out there as well. Albert Pujols just is not his normal self. Peter Bourjos, Zach Cozart, both these guys are hitting below 120. Justin Bour still hitting below the Mendoza line as well, but he's able to provide some power. But I do like the way that Daniel Fletcher has been able to step up as well. And with Shelby Miller on the mound, you know that they're going to be getting a whole lot of free passes. So for that reason, going to be looking at the Angels run line and a total to be determined at this point, just because it's really hard to tell with whether or not Mike Trout is going to be on the lineup. So check back on my Twitter page in the morning there, but certainly looking at Angels run line here. 917, 918 on the betting rotation. It is the Kansas City Royals, and they are in Chicago to face off against the White Sox. Irvin Santana goes for the Chicago White Sox. Heath Fillmyer for the Kansas City Royals. Total on this game is 9.5, and it is shaded under. Under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 120. Over is anywhere between even money and minus 110. And we're seeing 1.9 out there. That over is minus 125. The under is minus 105. If you like the White Sox, you're going to be laying anywhere between minus 125 and minus 130. With the Royals, you're getting anywhere between plus 110 and plus 120. It is hard to back the Kansas City Royals and their bullpen at this point, but the White Sox also have a very bad bullpen. The good news is it didn't get much use yesterday because our good buddy Carlos Rodon had a very good start for the White Sox. They were able to get the job done, and they were able to get the win. I just feel like the White Sox have the better bats in this spot, so I'm actually going to lock in the White Sox run line here at plus 155. I think that they should be able to completely blow away a certain Heath Fillmyer that's absolutely terrible. His ERA going into this game is 15, which I know that it's obviously a small sample size and everything like that, but even last year, he didn't necessarily do the best job of locating in 82 and a half innings, 57 strikeouts in those 82 and a third innings, lent himself to contact a lot as well. And with the White Sox, you've got a bunch of guys that do a good job of being able to hit. Yohan Moncada hitting 328 with 3 home runs. Tim Anderson hitting 429 for this team. Jose Abreu is hitting right around 200, but he's able to provide some pop. Eloy Jimenez has been doing a good job towards the middle of the lineup as well. He's hitting 288. And I do think that at some point, Daniel Polka and Adam Engel are going to be able to hit for this team. So I do think that there are some good bats for the White Sox. And for the Kansas City Royals, you do have Whit Merrifield doing a good job of being able to get on base, but Jorge Soler, He's only hitting .217 with 4 home runs. Ryan O'Hearn is not doing a great job for this team. Alex Gordon does a terrific job of a little bit of everything, hitting .360, 3 home runs, 13 RBI, but you just have a lot of questions with guys like Lucas Duda and Chris Owings and company at the bottom of the lineup. I do think that both these guys are going to get roughed up on the mound because Irvin Santana, he himself in his first start, was absolutely awful. He hasn't been himself the past couple years. I'm going to be on the White Sox run line and the over in this spot. And both these plays are locked in, and we conclude with 919, 920 on the betting rotation. It is the Cleveland Indians going to Seattle to face off against the Mariners. Yusei Kikuchi goes for the Seattle Mariners. Trevor Bauer for the Cleveland Indians. Total in this game is anywhere between 7 and 7.5. If you like the 7, the over is between -115 and -120. The under is anywhere between -105 and even juice. If you like the under of 7.5, that's anywhere between -120 and -125. The over is between even juice and +105. If you want to take a shot here on the Cleveland Indians, you're going to be laying anywhere between -110 and -118. Meanwhile, if you like the Mariners, you're getting anywhere between even juice and +108. I'm even seeing a -105 out there, which obviously, if you like the Mariners, you want to avoid that, but I am all about Trevor Bauer in this spot. I know he got a little bit dinged up when he took his start against the Detroit Tigers a few days ago, but all in all, Trevor Bauer, one of the best starters out there in the bigs, and Kikuchi has very good plus stuff. I think that he's going to be a very dynamic pitcher, but we're noticing the Seattle Mariners are in a little bit of a slump. They've lost 3 straight games. Their bullpen, as we heard from Curtis Rodgers, still has some very big question marks with it, and something that few people know about the Cleveland Indians is that they've actually got one of the best bullpen ERAs out there in the bigs. I know that obviously the bullpen got dug into a little bit yesterday when they went up against the Kansas City Royals because Corey Kluber just was not his normal self, and I do think that both these teams are going to be able to score some runs. So I'm going to take this total over. I am on the Cleveland Indians because I did like the way that their offense really came alive against the Kansas City Royals. They were able to hang 8 runs in that game yesterday. You got to like the way that in the middle of the lineup, Carlos Santana has been swinging. He's hitting just below 400 for this team. Leonis Martin at the top of the lineup is starting to get things going as well. He had 3 hits yesterday. He's now hitting .271. He had his 3rd home run of the year. Jake Bowers is nearly back to 200. Brad Miller is now hitting .250 as well. That's been a good sign. And Taylor Naquin out there in the outfield has been able to provide a little bit of pop. And the big key for this team, they now have Carlos Gonzalez in the lineup as well. In his debut yesterday, he went 1 of 5, but you got to think that that's going to help, especially with Francisco Lindor still in the lineup. And with the Seattle Mariners, you've got a bunch of mashers. Jay Bruce has 7 home runs so far this year. Daniel Vogelbach has been absolutely sensational. Tim Beckham hitting .339. Mitch Haniger has been picking it up with his hitting as well. He was able to hit a home run yesterday, as the Mariners have had a home run in every single game so far this year. I don't think that that'll change, but I do think that Trevor Bauer going to give the better start, and I do think that the Indians are going to be able to score 5 runs in this game. I think they're going to get to a Seattle Mariners bullpen that, let's face it, isn't quite as good as the one that the Cleveland Indians are able to trot out there. So for that reason, I'm going to be on the over in this spot, and I'm on the Cleveland Indians. Both these plays are locked in, and that will do it for another edition of MLB Overtime Betting. A big thanks to my man Curtis Rodgers for joining me in the last segment. You can follow him on Twitter at @akidfromkent. And if you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you have a question for the podcast, feel free to tweet it in at @GNN_81. Let's make today a successful, profitable, and fun day, and I'll talk at you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.